Hello and welcome to the Blue Amber Saga. Lately, I've been talking quite a bit about accessibility and thought it would be quite helpful to share some more about it in practice. And to help with this, let's talk about it in relation to me and apply it kind of generically as well as within games. So, the first thing I would like to point out before we begin is that accessibility features may actually be actively used in our lives rather than what we might be consider as a distinct and separate thing. So, one example that tends to be referred to a lot is like the lowered curbsides on the streets. And so originally they were brought in for those who would use wheelchairs and other kind of mobility aids. However, when you think about it, they're used in all sorts of other ways on a daily basis. So, like for those who do cycling, those who have to have a suitcase with wheels and moving that along. Also, those who are trying to move really heavy objects like bins and also wheelbarrows. And so, actually, it helps out in all sorts of different ways. And kind of from a gaming perspective, one of the features I do value a lot is actually having the ability to pause a game and to do a quick save. I mean, so for me, I can sometimes get motion sickness in certain games, and also sometimes I can get pain from like a repetitive strain in my hands. And it means that to have the best game experience, like playing in a first player shooter game, I need to actually have rest points to help with this. Yet, this feature is also helpful in all sorts of situations. And so, like, it's helpful that if I need to just stop unexpectedly, like to go and answer the door, or it might be more kind of generically just to go and grab a drink. Sometimes I'll use it to help with coming up with ideas on how to best beat a game, and whether that's to just allow me to kind of process what's going on and give myself some more thinking time, or just to seek advice online. And again, this kind of adds to a more kind of positive experience, but it can also just be applied to everybody as well. And so, one question to kind of think about is this: so, how might you be able to access content if you can't actually read or write very well? And this is something which I struggled with a lot of my life. And even now, I do find there are certain situations where it is hard. And so some of the answers to this was like through having a scribe or a reader at school and also kind of in exams. Another was actually having a dictaphone to be able to record the lessons and to focus on listening and learning the content rather than having to try and actually write physical notes at the same time. And this was especially helpful when I was at university. But also at work, then I would sometimes use a screen reader on my device, which would go through all the stuff I've written and help with spell checking and to make sure it actually sounded all right. And in other videos, I've mentioned about having content in more than one format and how actually that is a really helpful and good kind of accessibility point. And a big one for me when I was growing up was actually symbol language. So, like in PEX or in Makaton, for instance. And this is such an important accessibility feature, which can actually speak regardless of what language you know. And it's all very much a common language. And so, for me, so like in games when I used to play Settlers 4, and also in the Lego video games, then this language actually enabled those to join in from a wider audience and from a younger age. And this added to it as well with just thinking of the kind of original Lego Star Wars game, where they used to have like more kind of visual expressive acting in the kind of scenes, where you could get a grasp of what was actually going on without any words being used at all. And also, they used to kind of add humour to this as well, to the narrative. But even still, you were able to understand what was going on. And this has kind of been later added with kind of voiceovers and subtitles to the characters in these scenes, of which that's also been added on top of this this language and this type of acting. And so it's just been able to additionally help those with visual and hearing impairments as well. And one of the kind of more difficult areas for accessibility for me is the kind of more cognitive side and making it understandable within the context of what's going on. And so this can actually be helped through simplifying the language and lowering the reading age, also by giving the ability to get more information where it's needed. And so, from a kind of gaming context, then so when I was growing up, um, we discovered, so me and my brother discovered the TV show Time Commanders, which, for those who've seen that and are familiar with it, it's based off the Total War games, and the first series was all based off Rome Total War. And because of that, then I've been a really massive fan of these games, and they are really great and really inspiring to play. Although initially, they were actually really quite hard to understand certain parts, which throughout the time of them kind of making more games, it has been improved across the years. So, for instance, when building objects like a farm, it used to kind of give a vague description of what the benefits were like. So, for example, farm production got +1. This was actually changed to farm production got 80 coins, and it became a lot more kind of measurable in terms of being able to do the gameplay, and so you could work out the potential benefits better. But a different example was the kind of different skills you could have for your troops, so like melee attack and defense. And for me, it raised questions um, on like how does that work? Does it depend on who attacked first and which stats are used, or does it kind of switch throughout like a battle, and that they are all equally kind of used depending on whether they're good or bad at it? But also things like, okay, well, we've got this morale value, and it says that some of my troops have 6 morale and others have 7. I mean, I can guess that 7 is better than 6, and so that troop might do a bit better. But otherwise, it doesn't actually really make sense what 6 or 7 actually represent. And what's been really helpful with these games is that they actually have archives that go into these questions in a bit more detail, and also other aspects of the game to make it more playable. But also, what's quite nice is that they actually do more stuff from a historic kind of point of view, and it can inspire those like me into wanting to know more about the history of what was going on. And so, one kind of final comment and a favorite way to help make something accessible is to kind of create flexibility and freedom to solving potential barriers. And so, a great example is in the game Stardew Valley, which is a farming role playing game where you have lots of quests to complete. And so, for the key missions, they may have a requirement of finding certain items, but then what they would do is they would say, okay, you need to go and find a certain 3 items, but actually you've got the option 3 out of 5 different items you need to find in order to progress. And so this would enable you to actually continue despite the fact of not being able to find that really rare lava eel in the game. Yeah, at the same time, it might and would be able to be more enjoyable for players who do actually kind of prefer to do fishing activities in that game, while allowing those who maybe enjoy that less but can do a different activity and yeah, make it more fun according to their own kind of desires. And so I hope that this has been interesting, and in the future, I'm hoping to do more on accessibility. We'll do that another time. This is the Blue Amber Saga.